Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. The United States Pentagon today stated that they have created a classified strategy to deal with drone incursions. Of course, as we all know, there's incursions all over the place these days over military installations. There's joint military installations over in the United Kingdom. There were incursions over installations in Virginia earlier this year and late last year. I mean, there's just incursions all over the place anymore of so-called drones, or what I was calling them yesterday was UAVs, but apparently the Pentagon refers to them more as UAS. It's more of an all-encompassing description of these what they're saying are unmanned aircraft systems, or well, I was calling them UAVs. Actually, you know what? We're going to straighten this up right now. I want to pull something up on the screen here. This is I'll leave links for everything that I present today, but there's a difference between a UAV and a UAS. I was using the term UAV yesterday, and then when I heard the Pentagon press conference today, I was like, okay, wait. Sometimes you hear UAVs and you hear UAS. Okay, what's the difference? And according to this information, the two terms are often used interchangeably when referring to drones and aerial surveying. However, there is a clear distinction between the two. Not much of a distinction, but here it is. It says UAV, which means unmanned aerial vehicle, is the actual aircraft that flies around to collect the required data and imagery, and UAS is, or unmanned aerial system, is the entire package needed to operate the system, which includes the UAV itself, the ground control system, camera, GPS, all the software, skills needed to operate the system, and tools required for maintenance. So that's the difference between them. But anyway, today, the Pentagon stated, the Pentagon spokesperson, Major General Pat Ryder of the Air Force, he's also the press secretary for the Department of Defense, stated that there's a new classified strategy to deal with these so-called drones or UASs. Anyway, I'll just play a clip here where he talks about it.
And finally, throughout his tenure, Secretary Austin has prioritized the development and rapid fielding of capabilities to counter the urgent and growing threat posed by unmanned systems. This week, the Secretary signed a classified strategy for countering unmanned systems to unify the Department's approach to countering these systems that looks across domains, characteristics, and timeframes. Unmanned systems, more commonly known as drones, have the potential to pose both an urgent and enduring threat to U.S. personnel, facilities, and assets overseas, and increasingly in the U.S. homeland. As you know, the threats presented by these systems are changing how wars are fought. With this singular strategy for countering unmanned systems, in conjunction with other major DoD initiatives like the Joint Counter Small UAS Office and Replicator 2, the DoD is orienting around a common understanding of the challenge and a comprehensive approach to addressing it.
And then later, in the same press conference, a reporter asked him a question, and here is the question and Ryder's response.
You talked about this new classified strategy, and you had talked before about that there were some incursions, particularly down in Virginia, over military facilities, and there's been others. Is there anything in the strategy that's more tactical that allows commanders to do anything, or is this just a broad statement of policy?
Of course, it's got all kinds of good information, but it's classified, so I can't talk about it. No. So really, Lita, again, recognizing that the strategy is classified, we will have an unclassified fact sheet that we'll be providing soon. Really, just kind of looking at how we'll approach this. One is ensuring that the department is prepared to conduct counter unmanned system operations, counter UAS operations. Two is looking at how we respond to incidents that do occur by pulling together subject matter experts and resources. And then third is tracking equipment and counter UAS equipment, UAS, one aspect of drones. So really, again, broad brush. It's kind of looking at this in a comprehensive and cohesive way. Again, I'm not going to go into the specific tactics, techniques, procedures at this point, but it enables the department to approach this in a way, again, that's comprehensive, cohesive, and holistic.
Okay, so basically they're acknowledging that there's an issue with so-called drones appearing over military installations. So they are, and there's a new classified strategy that they can't really talk about. They can't tell us everything about it. There might be something they could share with us at some point in the future. That's what I got out of this. But here's the problem I have with all of this. The problem I have with all of this is that this has been going on a long time. This has been going on forever. Okay, this has been going on since the end of World War II, and it hasn't ended. And basically it's the same playbook they're operating. The Pentagon is operating with the same playbook that it operated when this all started, right? And I have here in my hands a copy of Flying Saucers from Outer Space, which was written by Marine Air Corps retired Marine Air Corps Major Donald Kehoe, who was connected. He wrote books back in the 50s. He was the founder of NICAP, which was an organization that did UFO research. He's been dead since 1988, right? That's how long. This guy was one of the first people investigating UFOs, investigating the cover-up, basically. He was the first guy doing it. And in 1950, he had a book published, Flying Saucers Are Real. And then in 1953, this book I have is actually an original print. I bought it used. There's no dust cover with it, but it's still the original print. But it was published in 1953. And this talks about all sorts of incursions that were going on back in those days, including the July flap that occurred in Washington, D.C., where there were UFOs on different nights in mid to late July of that year, which ended up causing the Pentagon to have a hold a press conference to address these concerns and try to present excuses, including that it was just weather inversions that people were seeing. This stuff was seen on radar. There was no question about it. People were talking about flying saucers over Washington, D.C., and even before that, there was numerous sightings by commercial air pilots leading up to that Washington event. And here's something that occurred after that. I just want to read this. This is from Kehoe's book, Flying Saucers from Outer Space, and here's from on page 107. It says this. It says, at 10:51 a.m., August 1st, 1952, radar men at a GCI post, the GCI stands for Ground Control Intercept Post, had spotted a fast-moving saucer. Apparently, it was observing Wright-Patterson Field, or now known as Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, for the track showed it not far from the base, though at a high altitude. About this same time, the strange machine was seen from the ground by several civilians near Bellefontaine. It appeared to be round with a shiny metallic gleam. When the blips came on the scope, two F-86 jets were about 10 miles from the saucer on a GCI intercept problem. The two pilots, Major James B. Smith and Lieutenant Donald J. Hemmer, were immediately vectored toward the UFO. As Smith and Hemmer reached 30,000 feet, they saw a bright, round, glowing object maneuvering above them. To make certain it was not a ground reflection, both pilots changed course, circled, and climbed to view it from different angles. The saucer's appearance did not change. Positive it was a solid object, both pilots switched on their gun cameras and climbed at full power. At 40,000 feet, the mysterious device was still above them, pulling up at a sharp angle. Major Smith tried to get a picture, but his F-86 stalled and fell off. When Henner nosed up for a camera shot, the same thing happened. Then Major Smith, climbing again to 40,000 feet, made a second attempt. This time he was successful, and he clicked off several feet of film before the plane stalled. As he began the camera run, Smith's radar gun sight had caught the saucer for a moment. Hemmer's radar sight was caged inoperative, so he saw no radar blips. From the range of his radar set, Major Smith knew the unknown device must be between 12,000 and 20,000 feet above him to cause such a weak blip. But anyway, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I'm trying to make a point here, is that this is the kind of stuff that was going on back in the early 1950s. This book was published in 1953, and then this guy Kehoe spent the remainder of his life fighting UFO secrecy, and he's been dead since 1988, right? And here we have Major General Pat Ryder again today talking about they got to figure out a new they're figuring out a new classified strategy to deal with these UASs or drones, right? Quote end quote. So I have a problem with that because they've been dealing with these things since this all started back in 1947. They've been dealing with this stuff. It has not ended. It's never stopped, and they don't have any explanations for it ever. And I'm failing to believe that these things are like spy devices, spy drones from China and Russia. I mean, I have a problem believing that because, I mean, in some instances, maybe I just don't see those countries having the balls to do something like that. I mean, we have the strongest military in the world here. Well, unquestionably, the United States is the biggest, the baddest, the best, the most equipped military there is. It's the most funded, the highest funded military by far. We're gonna get into that in a second here. So I have a problem believing that the military has no answers with regard to these incursions. Now, I don't know what's going on over Jersey, but like a lot of people talked about, a lot of the objects, these car-sized drones, they might be drones. And this might be, like I talked about yesterday, and there were people today that actually, I received a comment from one of my subscribers, Christopher, who made the same kind of comment that all of a sudden there's these incursions all over the place. There's sightings all over the place of orb type objects, or they call them drones. Over in the UK, there's all those, over the military installations, there are sightings of things. They're calling them UASs. Again, like I said yesterday, how do you know they're unmanned? That's one thing. How do you know this? I don't know how they know this. I don't know where's the evidence. If you don't know what they are or who's operating them, how do you know they're unmanned? How do you know that? That's one question I have. But the bigger problem here is what might be happening, like I stated in the previous show, is that, okay, there's all these incursions, there's sightings everywhere all of a sudden. We're having a wave. That's what it seems like. We're having a wave. A lot of people are seeing orbs, just solid balls of light floating around, hovering around. I saw one myself recently, like I talked about. And a lot of people have been seeing these things. There's objects over military bases, and so you have to wonder: does these drones that people are seeing in Jersey, in the skies over Jersey, were they sent up by the military as some sort of a trick to say, oh yeah, there's obvious these things are drones, right? They look like the small planes. Actually, that's what they look like in those pictures. We were looking at them yesterday. So you have to wonder: is that some kind of some kind of a subterfuge to try to change the script here? Okay, we'll send up our own stuff, right? We'll act like we don't know what they are, and then we'll come out and say we're going to do this classified strategy to try to figure out what to do about these incursions with these drones. And obviously, what people are seeing in Jersey are drones because we're the ones who sent them up there, but we're not going to say anything, right? Ixnay on the anything say. So you wonder. So I don't know. That could be the case. That could be what's happening here. But because, like, at the same time, you remember the other thing I showed yesterday was just filmed by John Billingsley, who runs the YouTube channel Latchkey Hustle. He filmed over the skies of Los Angeles just on the night of November 30th, some kind of a pyramid-shaped object that looked very similar to the pyramid-shaped objects that were hovering over the USS Omaha. But see, the problem I have here is it's that they've been talking about these things for years. There've been all kinds of incursions for years, like in the one I just read from that occurred in 1952. Right, and that was in addition to all these other incursions that happened before that. This has been going on for decades, and yet the military never has any answers with regard to these things. Never. I don't see these other countries sending over drones and have them hovering there, and somehow we don't get them. We don't knock them down. Somehow they defy our jets. Nobody could ever intercept them. What's going on here? So that's what I think. There could be something going on here with the aliens themselves showing some interest in our military installations, more so than usual, perhaps. And then meanwhile, so to try to tamp down concerns from the public, the Pentagon decides secretly, okay, we'll send up some drones to try to take them off the scent. Right, I mean, those things in Jersey to me look like they're obvious drones. But here's the other problem. The other reason I think this is a big issue is because you look at the budgets over the last couple of years, the military spending of the United States compared to other countries. Let me pull this up on the screen. Okay, this is from Statista. and I'll leave links for all of this. And you look at this, it says this is from 2023. Countries with the highest military spending worldwide in 2023 in billion US dollars. The United States is on top. $916 billion was spent for military in 2023. And then China comes second with $296 billion. And then Russia with $109 billion, India $83.6 billion, Saudi Arabia with $75.8 billion, United Kingdom $74.9 billion, Germany $66.8 billion, Ukraine $64.8 billion, France $61.3 billion, Japan $50.2 billion, South Korea $47.9 billion. So they're the top countries. And the United States, by far, I mean, you put a whole bunch of those countries combined. You could put China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom combined, and the United States still spends more money. And then you go to the following year. This is from Lowy Institute Asia Power Index, and this is from 2024. The estimated military spending in the United States for this year, $939 billion, according to this chart. China comes in second with $373 billion. Russia, $225 billion. India, at $132 billion. South Korea, $65.1 billion. Japan, $61.2 billion. So, see, I have a problem. I mean, if the United States is by far way outspending everyone else in this world when it comes to military. But yet, these drones show up over military installations, and the United States military, has no way, for some reason, to figure out who's behind it. We have no answers whatsoever, and the strategy that they just announced is classified. And they might give us they might throw us a crumb somewhere down the road to give us a little bit of a idea of what they're trying to do to figure out who's operating these drones. See, the issue is some of these things, as we all know, are not drones. Some of these things that people see over these military installations are obviously not drones. Okay, now the things I think that the people we've been talking about the last week or so with regard to New Jersey. That stuff, they look like some kind of plane or drone. I don't know what they are, but they don't look like circular saucers or orbs or anything like that. But in other instances, these things are showing up. There are strange objects. There is strange phenomena, and we never get any answers from the military. And look at all the money that's being spent, almost $1 trillion. We're moving toward $1 trillion budget. That's how close. At some point now, the budget, the estimated budget for 2025, they're looking at $850 billion, but it'll probably end up even being more than that in the end, because there'll be other considerations, there'll be other things that will be added to it. So it's probably going to be somewhere like these other budgets, some of the other spending that we've seen this year and the year before. It's going to be probably in the $900 billion range, and it's by far outspending all of these other countries by far. And so for some reason, we're supposed to believe that these enemy countries have figured out some sort of technology that exceeds anything that we have. All the money, all of the brains we have working behind the scenes, all of the government scientists. We're to believe that our military, the United States military, the strongest military in the world, is unable to tell us what is showing up and what is behind these military incursions. We have no idea. We're told it's probably Russia or China all the time. I just don't know if those countries would have the balls enough to do these kind of things to the United States, knowing the kind of powerhouse that we are here. I just have trouble believing that. I really do. And besides that, if you look at the history, like we just went over, the history tells you everything you need to know. That they've been dealing with this for decades, since 1947. There's been incursions over different nuclear facilities, over Oak Ridge National Laboratory, that all over this country that we've been dealing with incursions by UFOs. You think about the Montana incident from 1967, Malmstrom Air Force Base, when the UFO shut down the nuclear missiles there. So this has been going on, and we're getting the same old song and dance from the Pentagon. Now they have a classified strategy to deal with these UASs, okay? What about you've been saying this since the early 1950s? This is the same story we've been getting to the 1950s. Look at all the money that's been spent. Look at all the money that's being spent every year, every single year, all these years. The United States military, strongest military in the world, spending all this money, and yet we have no answers. We have no answers. We're getting the same kind of stuff, the same kind of baloney over and over and over again. It's like a broken record. So it's very tiring. And it's even beyond that. I mean, you read some of these books by Donald Kehoe, and you see the mentality that was going on back in the 1950s by people in the intelligence side of things. There was a W.C. Odell who was an intelligence officer who put together a report back in 1953 regarding some people's belief in the military at the time that these were interplanetary, that these things were coming from another world, and they were planning to use Earth as their new home. That's what they were talking about in the 1950s. And here in 2024, we're hearing from the Pentagon today saying, "Oh, we just came up with a classified strategy to deal with these quote drones, end quote, or UASs, end quote, or UAP." I mean, we don't even know what it is. And again, how do they know we're unmanned? Or is that another trick of the English language here? It's not that they're calling them unmanned because they know there's no men in it, but that doesn't mean there might not be some non-human intelligence in there. Maybe that's what's going on with that too. But anyway, I just want to read something here. This is from toward the end of the book when this Colonel W.C. Odell, who was an intelligence officer, where Kehoe, he was writing this like in the first person narrative, similar to how Lou Elizondo wrote his book, basically the same way that Lou Elizondo wrote his book, not similar. His book Imminent. That's how this book was written. In fact, I actually, when I read Lou Elizondo's book Imminent, I thought it was very reminiscent of the way Donald Kehoe wrote his books back in the 50s. But anyway, at one point, Kehoe was handed this report that was put together, this document that was put together by this intelligence officer, Colonel Odell, and the title of this was "Planet Earth Host to Extraterrestrial Life." And so the idea was that intelligence officials, including this W.C. Odell, some of them had the mentality back in the 1950s that that's what was happening, that there was extraterrestrial life that decided to come to our planet, and they were going to live here. Basically, that's what they were. We were going to play host to them, and that's what was happening. Later on in the book, it says, "On the way to the airport, I thought over Odell's suggestion. The mass migration idea wasn't new. It had been used in dozens of stories and plays, but I'd never taken it seriously. Moving any large number of people from a distant planet seemed impossible. Of course, it could be done gradually over a period of years. Even then, the problem seemed enormous, though they might not be barriers to a race which had long ago mastered space travel. How would man in some far distant age go about migrating to another planet?" And then he talks about what, a scenario where man in the future how would they have handled it? And so they were talking about these concepts back in the 1950s in the government, in the Pentagon. People in the Pentagon had no idea back then what the story was with all these UFOs that they were seeing, and they know what it is. See, here's the thing: even back then, at this point in time, people like Kehoe, of course, he wasn't read in on this. He wasn't part of Majestic 12 or anything like that. Obviously, he was trying to get them to tell the truth, and they weren't doing it. Interesting to me that that things really haven't changed. They haven't changed. I mean, basically, we're seeing it's in a way when you look at it. If you look at this, what they were talking about, what was happening in the 1950s, there was a cover-up obviously going on then. There was some faction within the Pentagon that knew all about the reality that these things were from another world, apparently, right? That there was a non-human intelligent presence, but there were a lot of people in the Pentagon that weren't privy to this information. Now Kehoe, he had a lot of sources, but all they could do was speculate because a lot of his sources weren't part of the read on the program, obviously. But at the same time, they were trying to come up with an answer for the public. And meanwhile, such a group secretly studying this at the same time. And it looks like nothing's changed. It's the same situation right now as it was back then. They were seeing things back then. They would come out and they would try to just, put on a little show for the public to try to calm them down. Yeah, we're looking into it, and it's the same thing today. Oh yeah, we have a new policy now. We have a new classified strategy. That's what we got. Now we're going to move forward with it, and we'll update you in the future on that a little bit on what we can. It's classified. We can't really talk about it right now. It's basically the same thing, same stuff, same nonsense. They're just brushing us aside. They're not going to tell us anything, and I think that's how this is going to be. I really believe that. I'm starting to believe that we're not going to get the truth out of the Pentagon anytime soon. I think we're going to have to start just. I think what the world is going to need to acknowledge, what the world is going to have to acknowledge, is the fact that the Pentagon is they know. And they're just not going to ever admit. They're not going to tell us anything, ever admit to anything about it. We're going to get stuff like this, like at that press conference today. We're going to get stuff like that, and they're never going to say anything. They're never going to acknowledge it. I just don't see it. They're not going to tell the truth about it. They're never going to show us the records that they've been holding back from us all these years. That's not going to happen. But I think the rest of the world is going to have to acknowledge that that's the reality in which we live in. The reality is that militaries of the world are keeping this quiet. They're not telling us, even though we see it. I mean, it's there. We have evidence now that shows it, without a doubt. There's no question about it. We're not alone, and that's what's going on here. And they're just doing the same song and dance to us now as they did decades ago, over 70 years ago. Same stuff, same thing, same movie. We're seeing the same. We're part of the same movie. There's people who lived and died that were part of this movie in the long past, and now we're part of a new movie, a new version of it now. Actually, there's been multiple versions of this same movie throughout the years. I don't know I don't know where we are now. Maybe it's UFO Secrecy 10. I have no idea what movie we're at, what sequel we're at this point. It's the same story over and over again. Anyway, I want to check out some of the comments from yesterday's episode I received with regard to objects appearing everywhere. Anyway, I received we'll go to Spotify first. There was a comment here from Elon Jenkins, who says that he's just saw two orbs recently. He says, Jim, I saw two white orbs to the east of Orlando 2 evenings ago on Monday. There were two rather large white circular lights. They did not move, they did not flash, and they did not fly by the way all of the other planes do. I have no idea what they were, but they don't fit the mold for airplanes on arrival because they did not move. I took 3 photos of them. They were gone when I went back to look for them. So that was interesting. So as people are seeing these things, I've been saying, a lot of people are just seeing these things in the night sky recently. There's some things that have nothing to do with Starlink that are just like orbs just hovering around and moving around in ways that conventional aircraft, as we know it, do not move. And here's something from Jonathan Haynes on Spotify wrote, the New Jersey drones seem to have engine noise. They appear shortly after dusk and leave right before dawn. They have appeared daily starting on the 18th of November and appeared every night except Thanksgiving night. They appear in packs numbering up to 8 at a time and have been as low as a few dozen feet above the ground. Yeah, I think that what's going on in Jersey does look to me like drones. Other instances look like it could be something else. But you have to wonder, why are those drones in the sky, and why do no authorities have any answers at this point with regard to them? Like, who's behind it? To me, it seems like there's some nefarious goings on. Perhaps it's some sort of like subterfuge, like I stated yesterday. That it's okay. We'll get their minds off of it. So we'll send up some drones over Jersey. That will get people talking about drones in Jersey, and then they'll put in their brains. They'll figure that must be what people are seeing over these military installations in Virginia and in the UK and all over the place. That's the idea. That's how you control the public with this when it comes to this. This is how you control them. I wouldn't doubt it. Then don't doubt it. Don't doubt that those are things that these gatekeepers might do, because they would do it. I believe that. Okay, I'm going to switch over to YouTube and see some of the comments there. Skidora says, I started to see more people report a plasma ball UFO. Yeah, some people believe what those orbs are just plasma balls or something. Bradley Swaney responded saying, those orbs are like a glass ball full of energy. I've been 30 feet from one. Crazy. Scared the heck out of me being that close. I'll never forget it. And then another person responded to Bradley. Edward says, we see them often also in the mountains and hayfields in Vermont. And Avi Z says, things are definitely intensifying, getting pretty hard for even non-believers to not take notice. Something really big can't be far off. Yeah, we don't know what's going on. I think it's possible that extraterrestrials are involved with some of these sightings. In some of them, I don't think they are. And I think that in some cases, there are drones are responsible. But I have a problem that believing that all of these drone incursions over all of these military bases, and some of them we probably don't even know about. Some of them we're probably not even hearing about. But all of these incursions, right? I can't imagine that it's something to do with some rival country. I just can't imagine it. I just can't see it. I have trouble believing that, especially when you look at the amount of money that the United States spends on defense every year compared to all these other countries. I mean, we should have them. If there's some enemy drone out there, we should be able to figure that out within 2 seconds. I mean, this is ridiculous. Let's see what else. Bill Davis says, this point in time reminds me of the early to mid-1980s wave of UFOs in the New York Hudson Valley. Yes, there are a lot of people were seeing UFOs in Hudson Valley back in the 1980s, which was incredible. That was the subject of a lot of different documentaries, particularly during the 90s. I remember there was quite a few. They were still talking about, people are still talking about those Hudson Valley sightings. I mean, they're incredible sightings. Bill Davis also says, yes, I had my own, Mr. Jump says to Bill Davis, says the Hudson Valley wave was crazy. Lots of giant crafts and abductions too. Yes, there were. And Bill Davis responded, says, yes, I had my own sighting with 5 other witnesses of a huge boomerang-shaped craft. It was not our own. Oh, boy. Rusty Grunner says, like Lone Wolf said, we are witnessing an important time in the history of man on this planet. Yes, I think we are. Charles Blithfield says, I wonder if there's more objects or people are suddenly not afraid of sharing their experiences. That's something to think about, too. Maybe people are as afraid. But I will say this, and it could be the fact that UFOs are talked about a lot these days, especially recently. I mean, we just had that hearing where you had Elizondo and Tim Gallaudet speaking, among others. I mean, that was a big deal. It's in the public consciousness a lot more these days than usual. There's a lot of sightings that are being reported by different, not the major outlets for the most part, but smaller news outlets that do have a lot of readers across the internet, things like the Daily Mail and things like that. So maybe more people are focusing their eyeballs onto the skies, and that's why there are more sightings. That could be part of it. It could be a combination of a lot of different factors. We just don't know. Robot X4242 says, out of all the scenarios you laid out, I'd have to go with all of the above. Lights in the night sky by itself is not that compelling, but when combined with unusual flight characteristics or strange behaviors not normally associated with illegal hobby drone operators or foreign adversaries, the NHI option cannot be ignored. Too much high strangeness. Yeah, I think that's probably what we're going to find out, that it is a combination. I mean, I'm not saying that some enemy countries aren't responsible for some of these incursions. I mean, they could be, but it just seems like it's out of control. I just can't see them being that brazen and that bold. And we don't have, and yet all this time keeps passing, and we get no answers from the Pentagon about this, except we're going to have a new class. We come up with a new classified strategy to deal with these. We'll give you some details later on. I mean, why? I mean, at this all these years, there's still no strategy to deal with UFOs. I mean, I just don't believe it. We're being led down the garden path here, folks. They're lying to us about all of this stuff. Abby Z says, this feels like the first part of the movie. People pointing and saying, what are those? Then they find out. Yeah, this could be the opening prelude, the opening scene, the cold open to a movie, and then the credits, and maybe this is the beginning of it. People are seeing UFOs all over the place, and then the next thing, we're going to find out what the story is, and we might not like it. Who knows? EcoJar 3047 says, we haven't seen the massive dark Rubik's Cube shaped ones in a while. I have a feeling those will start popping up again soon. Who knows? Maleficus says those silent truck-sized pyramid drones with infinite battery life and anti-jamming technology must be bestsellers on Amazon at the moment. Yeah. I mean, he's talking about the John Billingsley pyramid UFO. I mean, that's ridiculous. That thing, I mean, you see it floating around and it just like disappears. What was it? I mean, look, he said he was even more impressive when he's looking at it with your own eyeballs. I mean, you could see the dimensionality of it. It was three-dimensional and it was pyramid-shaped, he said. So, yeah, something, who knows? And they look like that looked like the same kind of object that was out there floating above the Omaha. So you have to wonder, too, remember a lot of debunkers were saying, it was just stars in the sky. But, okay, how come this object that Billingsley filmed that you see moving across the sky, and I hope people checked out his YouTube channel. In fact, I'll leave a link for his YouTube channel again, because he has a lot of videos like that. But you check out his full video on that pyramid object, right? I mean, that thing disappears. You can't see it after a certain period of time. Like, where did it go? What is it? Robert Logsdon says, they're not drones. Yeah. Latchkey, this is John Billingsley. He says, a great episode, Jim, with or without my pyramid footage. Something is definitely shifting on the planet. Exciting times to be alive, at least for those of us with open minds. Keep up the great work. I forgot to give you a heart there, John. Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you for sharing that stuff. Tim G. Star says, strange days. Yes, they are. Rob Sam says, yeah, it's hard to tell. There was the big multi-day event over the Capitol in 52. Were there other fleet sightings in 52, but because of the slow communications in the Cold War in those days, maybe there were other fleet sightings in the world, Moscow, Paris, San Francisco, etc., etc., etc. Well, like I said, if you read this book by Major Donald Kehoe, Flying Saucers from Outer Space, I mean, there was all kinds of UFO sightings leading up to that Washington incident, and then it continued after that. It just continued. It never stopped. It's never stopped. Christiana says, I started seeing orbs in the night skies in 2019. I think the orbs and aliens might be different things going on, but probably connected somehow. Online, it seems like everyone is talking about them, but in my life, no one is talking about them. I very casually mentioned the lights in the sky, and the response was, you aren't one of them nut jobs, are you? My eyes and smile screamed, yes, I'm one of those nuts, but my mouth had to say, nah, no one out here is talking about orbs. Yeah, you know what? I don't care what people think about me. Obviously, if I did, I wouldn't be doing the show. But I wouldn't worry about it, because here's the thing: you're on the people who have accepted this reality. You're on the right side of things. Believe me. Right? I'm telling you, 100% assurance. Right? The people who don't accept it, they're the fools. They're the fools. Joe Miller says, I saw a very similar orb, just as you described. He's talking about the same one that I saw. Similar description to the one I was talking about. I says, just as you described, only in the daytime. It was Tuesday, November 26th at 11 a.m. over the south approach to the San Francisco airport. SFO airport. Same maneuvers as you described. Also orange glowing. I searched UFO videos that day, and it seems like they are suddenly everywhere. So a lot of people are seeing orbs everywhere right now. Terrence Willis says, the government will say they don't exist even when they are literally hovering over their head. Yes, that's true. Yes, it has. As Kimo Sabi wonders, has there been any over Moscow or Beijing? And there have been some reported over Chinese airports, I know, recently. I haven't really heard anything over Russia, but you know that they are. They're appearing everywhere. They're just everywhere all the time. People are seeing them. And they're capturing them on their cell phones. A lot of orb videos are out there. They're all floating all over the place these days. People are seeing them. They're all over the place. Tons of Bricks says, someone on TikTok made a good point I never thought of. They said, what if everyone is seeing them more because they're leaving Earth? I never thought about that. I don't know if I think that's the case. I don't know if I believe that. Rick Hendricks, Dutch company, says he doesn't believe it either. Says, what would be the point hanging out there for hours as reported? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they're leaving. I think they're here. I think they came here a while ago, some of them, and they're here to stay for what reasons unknown. Okay, and here's a comment from Mark Ulmer. He says, exactly what I told my girlfriend this morning. I had never read this anywhere before. I asked, how the hell do they know they are unmanned if they are sometimes described as the size of a car? And now I hear this question from you. I have watched tons of reporting on them, and nobody ever said that. We got to get used to the fact that unmanned drones is the new swamp gas. Nothing makes sense with that explanation. Yes, it doesn't make any sense. Like I said, if you don't know what the object is, and you don't know who's operating it, like how do you know they're unmanned? How do you know there's nobody inside of it? How do you know there's no alien creature inside of it? How do you know there's no living entity of some type inside of it? I just don't know how you do. Gregory Todd says, we barely have enough money to pay the head of Arrow to lie to the Senate, so how could we afford to pay this drone show across the world for weeks? Come on. Yeah, like I think in some cases it could be drones. I don't know what's going on in Jersey. I suspect we're going to find out about one of these cases, but not all of them. Not all of them. You're not going to find out about all of them. That's not going to happen. Here's what Edward K61 says. I seen a ship lit up in the very early morning hours above the Green Mountains of central Vermont a few months ago, like a mile-long battleship or carrier, very brightly. By the time I could take a photo, it was gone in seconds. Boy, that has to be very, very frustrating when you try to take a picture of one of these things and then it disappears. Very, very frustrating. Anyway, I appreciate all the comments. I'm not going to be able to read all of them, but I do like to read the comments every few days and see what people are saying and what people are thinking. As you can see, a lot of other people out there are seeing these things. And our military has come up with a classified strategy that they can't share with us to deal with drones, drone incursions over or in our airspace. And maybe we'll find out someday what it's all about. Maybe they'll tell us about more about this. If we're good enough, if we're good little boys and girls, maybe we'll find out what this classified strategy is, or maybe we'll get a little tidbit of it, a little nugget of it. And that should be enough to send us home. And we can go to bed with a cookie and a glass of milk and get tucked into bed and go to sleep and forget about it. Forget about it all. Don't worry about the orbs. That's what the Pentagon's trying to tell you. Basically what they're trying to tell you is this: please stop asking us about these because we can't give you any answers. You're forcing us to continue to lie to you about this. That's what's happening as far as I can see. You're forcing us to continue to lie to you about this. Please stop asking us about these incursions, these drone incursions, because we're gonna have to keep calling them UASs and just keep lying to you about it. And even though we don't know what they are, who's operating them, we're gonna have to tell you that they're UASs and that there's nothing to worry about, and we have a strategy, but it's classified, and you just have no need to know. And we're going to have to deal with it. Meanwhile, we do have evidence for the rest of the world that's interested. There is absolute proof that we're not alone on this planet. At some point, those two things are going to have to come and meet with each other. The evidence against the lies, and let's see what happens. Let's take it from there. Like there needs to be direct questions made during a congressional hearing to people in the Pentagon. And the evidence needs to be presented, and then an explanation would be requested. From and like, you don't know anything about these creatures that we see here in this video. Like, that's what needs to happen at some point in the future, and that would be interesting to hear what they have to say. Anyway, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.